Eli had never thought of himself as a patient man. He liked order, quiet, and mornings that started with the smell of coffee and the soft hum of the colony's air filtration system. His apartment overlooked the colony's central park, a green patch of synthetic grass dotted with solar-powered trees that shimmered faintly under the artificial sky. Life here on Aurora Station was orderly, predictable, and for Eli, perfectly fine. That was until Xylo moved in next door. Xylo's arrival had been subtle at first. A new neighbor in a colony of hundreds wasn't unusual, and Eli usually left such matters to the colony's administrative AI. But Xylo was not subtle in the way Eli understood it. Within hours of moving in, the apartment next to him began to emit faint pulses of colored light. At first, it was soft, like a gentle mood lamp, shifting from pink to blue, then green. Eli thought maybe Xylo was trying to make the apartment cozy. But when the lights started flashing in patterns, almost like a code, Eli felt a small knot of curiosity mixed with worry. By the second day, strange noises joined the lights. Not loud or threatening, but unusual. A soft humming that rose and fell in pitch, a sequence of clicks that seemed almost musical, and occasional whistles that sounded eerily like laughter, except that laughter had a rhythm too precise to belong to any human. Eli tried to ignore it at first, telling himself he was imagining things. But imagination had limits when the glowing shapes from Xylo's balcony began drifting into his own view. One evening, Eli returned from the communal cafeteria carrying a tray of steaming food. Xylo's lights were brighter than usual, pulsating in rapid bursts. Eli froze for a moment on his own balcony, unsure if he should knock. Then, without thinking, he whispered, "Hello." The lights paused. Then a gentle hum filled the space between the apartments. Eli raised his voice. "I'm your neighbor, I'm Eli." A soft, almost melodic voice answered, "Xylo." The sound seemed to resonate from the balcony railing itself, or maybe from the air around it. Eli could not tell. Nice to meet you, Xylo." He smiled awkwardly, holding out a hand. The lights responded by changing color slowly from green to yellow, almost like a sun rising. Eli laughed nervously. "I think that's good." Xylo's next action surprised him more than the lights or the sounds. A thin, translucent appendage, like a ribbon of liquid glass, emerged from the apartment and waved in the air. Eli jumped back. "Okay, that's something," he muttered. The ribbon shimmered and then gently tapped his shoulder. He yelped, half in shock, half in awe. Over the next few days, Eli watched his neighbor with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Xylo's routines were unlike anything he had seen. In the morning, the balcony would glow softly, with tiny geometric shapes dancing in patterns that seemed almost like writing. At night, the shapes became larger and more elaborate, almost like floating sculptures. Occasionally, the shapes drifted toward the colony's park below, and Eli noticed the synthetic grass responding. It glimmered, rippling faintly as if energized by Xylo's presence. The strangest part was Xylo's diet. Eli had watched him once, from a discreet distance, unfold what appeared to be a crystalline container filled with tiny orbs of light. Xylo would touch the orbs gently with his appendages, and they would dissolve silently into glowing mist that seemed to feed him. Eli tried not to stare too much, though his curiosity burned hotter with each observation. By the fifth day, Eli realized something unusual was happening. The colony's animals, small synthetic creatures designed to mimic life, were behaving oddly. Mechanical birds in the park began to flock around Xylo's apartment at all hours. Tiny, robotic squirrels appeared to move faster, their movements almost playful rather than programmed. Even the colony's weather system, a holographic simulation of clouds and rain, seemed to shimmer more vibrantly near Xylo's balcony. Eli sat one evening with his cup of synthetic coffee, staring at the spectacle. He sighed. "Okay, maybe I need to understand what's going on." He had never considered himself a scientist, but curiosity, it seemed, could turn even the most ordinary human into an amateur researcher. He set up a small recorder, a device capable of capturing sound, light, and motion. He positioned it discreetly to gather as much information as possible without intruding on Xylo's space. The next morning, Eli found the results more confusing than enlightening. The lights and sounds were rhythmic, yes, but there was a pattern that repeated every few hours. It wasn't like anything Eli had seen in human communication or computer algorithms. He frowned, scratching his head. Maybe it's a language, he whispered to himself, or some kind of signal. He resolved to observe Xylo more closely. He began taking notes, recording the colors, the shapes, the timing of the movements. He even tried mimicking some gestures, waving his hands or shifting his own lights to see if Xylo would respond. Xylo did respond. Not in the way Eli expected, but there was recognition. The lights would pause, then swirl faster, almost like a laugh. Eli laughed along, feeling a strange connection forming. Then came the third day of extraordinary activity. Xylo's lights flared across the balcony, bright and warm, spreading into the shared garden area below. Eli noticed the synthetic plants growing rapidly, bending toward the glow. The air shimmered faintly as if carrying energy. He stepped closer to the balcony railing. "Xylo, is everything okay?" The humming deepened, a slow, melodic sound. Then the most surprising thing happened. A small orb of glowing light floated down toward Eli, stopping just above his shoulder. He froze, holding his breath. The orb pulsed, then emitted a soft wave of warmth that made him shiver pleasantly. Xylo's voice came again, low and melodic. "Eli, help!" Eli's mind raced. "Help," he swallowed. Okay, what do you need?" The orb shimmered, and suddenly the balcony transformed. It was no longer just a collection of shapes and lights. It became a miniature ecosystem, complete with tiny glowing plants, a flowing ribbon of light resembling water, and small shimmering creatures that darted and floated gracefully. Eli stepped back, mouth open. Xylo's next movement clarified everything. His appendages arranged some of the lights into patterns, forming shapes that Eli could interpret as invitations, gestures toward pairing, courtship, connection. Eli's heart skipped a beat. Xylo was in mating season, and somehow, his human neighbor was being asked to assist. Panic and excitement collided in Eli's chest. He had never imagined that being human could involve this kind of responsibility. He swallowed nervously, then reminded himself of one thing: patience and understanding could solve many problems. He approached the balcony slowly, holding out a hand, not because he expected contact, but as a gesture of calm and support. Xylo responded, not aggressively, but with a gentle swirl of light that seemed to acknowledge Eli's willingness. Then came the first task: arranging some of the glowing orbs into patterns that would attract a mate. Eli's hands shook slightly, but he followed Xylo's gestures as best as he could. His human logic mixed with Xylo's alien rhythm, creating a pattern that pulsed and shifted, vibrant and welcoming. Hours passed, and Eli became absorbed in the process. The colony's other residents began to notice, though from a distance. Children pointed, adults whispered, but Eli ignored them, focused entirely on helping Xylo. With each careful adjustment, the balcony became a mesmerizing display, a mix of alien beauty and human intuition. As the first day of collaboration ended, Eli stepped back and allowed himself a breath. The balcony was radiant, a tiny beacon of life and energy that shimmered under the artificial sky. Xylo's lights slowed, pulsing gently now, as if in satisfaction. The humming softened into a melodic hum, soothing and melodic. Eli smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. He had never felt so connected to something entirely alien and so important to its life cycle. Before heading to his apartment, Eli whispered softly, almost to himself, "I guess this is just the beginning." The night was quiet for the first time in days, but Eli knew it would not last. Xylo's mating season had begun, and somehow humanity, through patience, creativity, and empathy, had become an essential part of the process. Eli could only wonder what would come next. He went to bed, mind racing with possibilities. The hum of the balcony, the glow of the orbs, and the rhythmic pulse of Xylo's presence lingered in his thoughts. One thing was certain: life on Aurora Station would never be ordinary again. And that, Eli realized with a mix of dread and excitement, was exactly what made it so fascinating. Eli woke the next morning with a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. The sun simulation over Aurora Station cast soft golden light over the colony, but Eli barely noticed. His thoughts were consumed by Xylo and the events of the previous day. Somehow he had become part of something far larger than himself, a process that was completely alien, yet strangely beautiful. As he approached his balcony, he noticed immediate changes. Xylo's lights were brighter, more vibrant than yesterday, and the humming in the air was richer, almost like a symphony composed by an invisible orchestra. Eli's stomach fluttered. It was clear that Xylo's mating ritual had begun in earnest. Xylo's attention shifted the moment Eli stepped closer. A ribbon of light, thinner and more delicate than yesterday, reached toward Eli and then hovered in the air, moving in gentle arcs. He realized that Xylo was communicating again, not in words but in motion and color. Eli had become fluent enough after a day of observation to understand the basics. Xylo was requesting assistance to make the display more inviting, more appealing to the mate that would arrive soon. Eli took a deep breath. "Okay," he muttered, more to himself than to Xylo. "Let's do this." The first task was arranging the floating orbs into patterns that conveyed warmth and welcome. Eli tried to follow Xylo's gestures, but the alien rhythms were unfamiliar. He rotated the orbs slightly the wrong way, and the light pattern shimmered awkwardly. Xylo paused, pulsing a soft red, a color Eli had learned meant mild displeasure. Eli laughed nervously, adjusting the orbs again. This time the display flowed smoothly, the lights intertwining in delicate spirals. Xylo pulsed green, approval. Hours passed as Eli worked alongside Xylo. Each new pattern was more complex, combining orbs, beams of colored light, and even small pulses of sound. Eli began experimenting, adding slight twists of human creativity, a spiral that flickered in a soft orange, a wave of sound that rose and fell like a lullaby. Xylo's reaction was immediate and joyful. The alien emitted a series of low hums that made the air vibrate pleasantly, almost like laughter. Eli grinned. He had made Xylo happy. By mid-afternoon, Eli realized that the colony itself was responding. The synthetic plants in the park were taller, leaves shimmering more vibrantly than ever. The mechanical animals were more active, flocking toward Xylo's display as if drawn by invisible music. Even the weather holograms, the simulation of clouds drifting lazily across the artificial sky, seemed to bend slightly toward the balcony, refracting the light in kaleidoscopic patterns. Eli felt a thrill of pride. Somehow, his human creativity was enhancing Xylo's ritual. But then came the challenge. Xylo's gestures became more precise, more demanding, and Eli realized that the alien was trying to convey something he had not seen before: interaction with others. A mate would be arriving soon, and Xylo's rituals involved gestures that needed to be coordinated. Eli's role would not only be to support Xylo, but to act as a bridge between two species. The thought made him nervous. "Two species, huh?" he whispered, shaking slightly. He had never considered that helping could be so complicated. But then he reminded himself of what he had learned the day before. Humans had one advantage: creativity. If he could find solutions where logic failed, maybe he could help Xylo succeed. Around evening, a faint ripple of sound signaled that something, or someone, was approaching. Eli's pulse quickened. He stepped closer to the balcony, arranging the orbs into welcoming spirals. The glowing ribbon of light that had reached toward him yesterday pulsed rapidly, a sign of anticipation. Eli's human mind tried to imagine what Xylo's mate would look like. Would it be similar to Xylo? Completely different? He had no idea, and that made his stomach twist with nervous excitement. Then, with a shimmer of motion, the mate appeared. It floated just above the balcony, a glowing form that refracted light in 1,000 directions. Eli was momentarily breathless. The mate's colors were vibrant and shifting, like sunlight passing through crystals. Small orbs of light floated around it, creating a halo effect that made the entire balcony sparkle. The mate's presence was commanding, yet gentle. Xylo responded immediately, pulsing in intricate patterns of blue, green, and orange. The mate mirrored the movements, forming a slow, graceful dance of light and sound. Eli's jaw dropped. The ritual had begun, and he was right in the middle of it. Xylo turned toward Eli, a ribbon of light extending toward him. Eli realized that he was expected to assist, actively participate in the ritual. Panic set in for a moment. He had never done anything like this, never imagined he would become part of an alien courtship display. His hands shook slightly as he reached toward the orbs, arranging them in patterns Xylo had indicated with subtle pulses. The mate's lights responded immediately, forming patterns that intertwined with Xylo's. Hours passed in a blur of light, sound, and motion. Eli discovered that human improvisation could add depth to Xylo's ritual. He experimented with timing, spacing, and even sound patterns, humming along softly. Xylo's responses grew more enthusiastic with each small addition. The mate seemed to recognize Eli's contributions, responding with gentle pulses that complemented the human's improvisations. The colony's residents began to notice. Children pressed their faces against the observation screens, pointing and giggling. Adults whispered excitedly, wondering what had transformed the balcony into a spectacle of light and music. Eli paid them little attention, focused entirely on guiding the patterns, learning the rhythm, and helping Xylo and the mate communicate. By late night, the balcony was a glowing masterpiece. Colors twisted in spirals and arcs, orbs floated in perfect harmony, and soft pulses of sound filled the air, creating a symphony of light and music. Eli's heart soared. He had never felt more alive or more connected to something beyond himself. Xylo's movements slowed, and the mate's lights formed a pattern that Eli recognized as completion. The ritual was ending. Eli exhaled, feeling a wave of relief and satisfaction. The air pulsed softly as the lights dimmed, leaving behind a gentle glow. Xylo extended a ribbon of light toward Eli, and for the first time, Eli felt the alien gesture as personal gratitude. "You did well," Xylo communicated, not with words but with a slow pulse that Eli had come to understand as affection and thanks. Eli's lips curled into a smile. "Thanks, Xylo. You did amazing too." The mate lingered briefly, then drifted toward the colony's sky corridor, leaving a trail of sparkling light behind. Eli watched until the form vanished from view. Xylo's glow shifted to a soft, contented green, signaling rest. Eli leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. He had been part of something extraordinary, something entirely alien yet deeply human in its meaning. As he prepared for bed, Eli reflected on what had happened. He realized that humans had a unique ability that extended beyond logic, strength, or speed. Creativity, empathy, and patience, qualities often underestimated, could make a difference in ways no technology could. He had used his human mind to understand Xylo, adapt to an unfamiliar ritual, and help bridge the gap between species. In that moment, humanity had truly shone. Over the next few days, Eli continued to observe Xylo, though the intensity of the mating ritual had subsided. Xylo's lights were softer now, humming in gentle pulses that filled the balcony with quiet warmth. The plants in the park retained their shimmering glow, a lasting effect of the ritual. Even the colony's synthetic animals seemed calmer, almost as if they had participated in the celebration indirectly. Eli's neighbors began to approach him cautiously. A few wanted to understand what had happened, while others were curious about the mysterious lights. Eli smiled, telling them only that Xylo's species expressed themselves in ways humans might not fully understand. He avoided giving too many details, not wanting to break the magical impression of what had occurred. Then came the unexpected. One morning, Xylo extended a delicate ribbon of light toward Eli, pulsing softly. Eli instinctively knew it was an invitation. Xylo had accepted him as a participant, a friend, and perhaps even a partner in understanding. Eli's pulse quickened. Humans rarely had the chance to interact so directly with a completely alien intelligence, and he had been chosen. Over the next week, Eli and Xylo experimented together, creating small displays that were entirely new. Eli's human ideas merged with Xylo's instincts, resulting in patterns and music the colony had never seen. Residents began to gather at a distance, watching quietly as the two beings collaborated, fascinated by the beauty that unfolded before them. Children laughed, mimicking the light patterns with their own devices. Adults clapped softly, enchanted by the spectacle. Eli realized something important. Helping Xylo had changed him. He had learned patience, the value of careful observation, and the joy of contributing to something larger than himself. And he had discovered that even in a universe filled with alien life, humanity had qualities that could connect, inspire, and create wonder. One evening, as the colony's artificial sun set, casting a golden glow over the balcony, Eli sat beside Xylo's glowing display. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "I never imagined my life could be like this." Xylo pulsed gently in response, a slow, warm rhythm that Eli now recognized as comfort, and Eli knew without a doubt that the adventures were only beginning. Xylo's mating season had taught him more than any simulation or training ever could. Humans, he realized, had the ability to make a difference, not through strength or technology, but through curiosity, creativity, and a willingness to understand. Aurora Station would never be ordinary again, and neither would Eli. Eli woke to the soft glow of Xylo's balcony lights. The pulsing warmth in the air felt familiar now, comforting in a way he had never expected. The past week had been extraordinary. He had helped Xylo through the complexities of his mating season, learned to understand alien signals, and even created new light patterns that enhanced the ritual. Now, however, a new sense of anticipation hung in the air. Xylo's lights pulsed gently as Eli approached. The alien had begun a new sequence, one more intricate than any he had seen before. This time, Eli realized he was not just assisting, he was a central part of the ritual itself. The mate that had appeared before had vanished after the initial courtship, but Xylo's gestures now suggested that a new, final stage was about to begin, one that required coordination, creativity, and trust. Eli took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His human mind raced with possibilities. How could he contribute meaningfully? How could he help Xylo succeed in a ritual so alien, so unlike anything he had ever experienced? Then he remembered the lesson of the past week: observation, patience, and creativity. If he could blend these qualities with Xylo's natural instincts, perhaps he could help complete the process. The first task was arranging the orbs and ribbons of light in a pattern that was not just visually appealing, but also culturally meaningful to Xylo's species. Eli worked carefully, following subtle pulses and gestures that guided him. Every time he made a mistake, Xylo's lights shifted, signaling gentle correction rather than frustration. Eli realized that communication was not just about accuracy, it was about empathy, understanding, and willingness to learn. Hours passed as the balcony transformed into a living canvas. Orbs floated like tiny stars, ribbons of light twisted into spirals and arcs, and soft pulses of sound created a rhythm that was both alien and oddly familiar. Eli's human touch added a layer of unpredictability, small touches of creativity that Xylo's species seemed to appreciate. The alien responded with shimmering waves of color, pulsing faster with each successful addition. By mid-afternoon, the colony began to notice the changes. Residents gathered at safe distances, watching in awe as the balcony became a spectacle of color, light, and sound. Children clapped excitedly, trying to mimic the patterns with their own devices, while adults whispered in admiration. Eli paid little attention to the crowd, focused entirely on Xylo and the ritual at hand. Then came the arrival of the mate. Unlike the first, this one moved differently, with a grace that made the floating orb sway gently as it approached. The colors of the mate were more vivid, shifting in complex patterns that seemed almost musical. Eli's heart raced. This was the final stage, the moment that would determine the success of the ritual. Xylo's lights pulsed in intricate sequences, and the mate mirrored the movements, weaving through the patterns of orbs and ribbons. Eli instinctively began to arrange the floating elements to support the flow of movement. His hands moved quickly but carefully, guided by both observation and intuition. Each adjustment created a new harmony, a new rhythm that enhanced the interaction between Xylo and the mate. Time seemed to blur. The sun simulation over Aurora Station shifted, casting golden light over the colony, but Eli barely noticed. He was immersed in the dance of light and sound, in the delicate balance between order and creativity. Every pulse, every ribbon, every orb was a conversation, and he had become fluent in the alien language of expression. Hours passed, and Eli began to notice subtle changes in the mate's behavior. It responded more enthusiastically to his human additions, weaving more intricate patterns and creating new pulses of light. Xylo's colors shifted as well, signaling joy, satisfaction, and connection. Eli realized that his human creativity was not just helpful, it was essential. He was bridging the gap between two species, making the ritual possible in a way that Xylo alone could not have achieved. As evening approached, the balcony glowed brighter than ever. The colors intertwined, creating patterns that were both symmetrical and dynamic, flowing like a living organism. The sounds harmonized with the pulses of light, creating a symphony that filled the air with beauty and wonder. Eli felt a deep sense of pride and joy. He had never felt more alive, more connected to the universe than in that moment. Then came the final challenge. Xylo's gestures indicated that the mate would respond fully only if Eli performed a gesture of his own, a movement, a signal that represented trust, understanding, and friendship. Eli's mind raced. What could a human do that would convey such complex feelings to an alien? He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking not as a human trying to mimic an alien, but as a being capable of empathy and creativity. He raised his hand slowly, arranging the orbs into a pattern that represented balance and harmony. He let the ribbons of light twist naturally, allowing the flow to guide him rather than forcing it. He hummed softly, creating a simple rhythm that complemented the pulses of Xylo and the mate. The effect was immediate. Xylo's colors brightened, the mate's pulses accelerated, and the entire balcony shimmered with a brilliance that seemed almost alive. The mate floated closer to Xylo, and Eli noticed a subtle change in the light patterns. The orbs aligned perfectly, the ribbons of light entwined in a final, harmonious spiral, and the pulses of sound reached a crescendo. Eli stepped back, holding his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Then it happened. The mate's light merged with Xylo's in a dazzling display that filled the balcony and spilled into the park below. The orbs floated higher, spinning in perfect synchrony, and the ribbons of light formed arcs that connected the two beings in a visible bond. Eli watched in awe as the alien dance completed, the ritual reaching its climax. For a moment, there was silence. Then a gentle hum filled the air, soft and melodious, as if the universe itself were acknowledging the event. Xylo pulsed slowly, a deep green that Eli had come to understand as contentment and gratitude. The mate mirrored the color, a subtle pulse that signaled peace and completion. Eli exhaled, overwhelmed by the beauty of what he had witnessed. The colony's residents erupted into quiet applause, clapping softly and smiling at the extraordinary display. Children pointed excitedly, adults whispered in wonder, and Eli felt a sense of connection to everyone around him. He realized that the ritual had not only been about Xylo and his mate, it had been about the potential of humanity to understand, to help, and to create beauty in the universe. Xylo extended a ribbon of light toward Eli, a gesture he now recognized as personal thanks and acknowledgement. Eli reached out, letting the light touch his hand, feeling warmth and a deep sense of connection. He smiled, a laugh escaping him despite his exhaustion. "We did it, Xylo," he whispered. "We really did it." The mate lingered for a moment longer, then floated gracefully toward the sky corridor of the colony, leaving a trail of sparkling light behind. Eli watched until it disappeared, feeling a mix of awe and contentment. Xylo's lights shifted to a soft, steady glow, signaling rest and satisfaction. Eli leaned back against the railing, taking in the view of the colony bathed in the afterglow of the ritual. For the next few days, Eli continued to observe Xylo, though the intensity of the mating season had passed. The balcony remained a place of gentle light, a reminder of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. Residents occasionally approached, curious about the lights and the hums, and Eli shared small insights without revealing the full complexity. He wanted the magic of the experience to remain intact. Eli noticed subtle changes in himself as well. He had become more patient, more observant, and more creative. He had learned to trust his instincts, to communicate in new ways, and to embrace uncertainty. Most importantly, he had realized that humanity had unique qualities that could bridge the gaps between species, that empathy and creativity could create harmony where logic alone might fail. One evening, as the artificial sun set over Aurora Station, Eli sat beside Xylo's glowing balcony. He watched the ribbons of light twist gently, the orbs floating in their perfect harmony. Xylo pulsed softly, a warm, comforting rhythm that Eli had come to recognize as friendship. He whispered almost to himself, "I never imagined life could be like this, but I think I like it." Xylo responded with a gentle pulse, affirming the sentiment. Eli smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had not only helped an alien complete an important ritual, but had also discovered something profound about himself. Humanity had the ability to make a difference, not through power or technology, but through understanding, creativity, and compassion. Over the following weeks, Eli continued to collaborate with Xylo in small ways. They experimented with new patterns of light and sound, creating displays that delighted the colony and strengthened their bond. Residents began to anticipate the spectacles, gathering at a distance to watch, learning to appreciate the beauty of collaboration across species. Eli knew that Xylo's mating season was over, but the experience had changed him forever. He had become part of something larger than himself, a bridge between species, a participant in a dance of life that transcended language and form. He had discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not in conquering or controlling, but in observing, understanding, and creating. One night, as he prepared for sleep, Eli looked out at the balcony, now quiet and serene. The orbs floated lazily, ribbons of light twisting gently in the air. He felt a profound sense of peace and satisfaction. He had done something extraordinary, and in doing so had discovered a new purpose, a new way to connect with the universe around him. Eli closed his eyes, letting the soft glow of Xylo's lights fill his mind. He knew that life on Aurora Station would never be ordinary again, and he also knew that humanity, in all its creativity and compassion, had the power to shine, even in the most alien of circumstances. And as the colony slept under the gentle hum of lights and the soft glow of the balcony, Eli dreamed of new possibilities, of new adventures, and of a universe that was waiting to be explored, with humanity leading the way through empathy, creativity, and understanding.